Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar, and once again, this is my opinion. Welcome to another episode of First Impressions, the video series where I give my initial thoughts on a variety of things. Today, it's going to be a film, and as you can tell from the title, it is the 1983 slasher film that became a cult classic in the years after its release, Sleepaway Camp, also known as Nightmare Vacation in the UK. This is a film that I had known of for years, mainly due to the shock value of its twist ending, but I had never seen, and I never saw any of the sequels, so I went into this one semi-cold, even though I did see Trachtenberg's review of it that he did a couple years ago, which, if you haven't seen that review, I highly recommend it. It goes into all the history behind this film, which I'm not really going to cover a lot of that in this one, just my thoughts on the film. It is a good companion review to the actual film. The film was released in '83, as I said, and it does have a lot of similarities, at least plot-wise, when it comes to the setting and what happens, because it's slasher film, with Friday the 13th. But from what I understand, that's just a coincidence, because the films are being made around the same time, even though this one was released years later. So it's not one of those things like, oh, they're cashing in on it. It was written, directed, and produced by Robert Hiltzik, which, other than the long-delayed direct sequel Return to Sleepaway Camp, this is the only film he's ever done, which it's dedicated to his mother, who he put as a doer. And if I remember right from Trachtenberg's review, there was a lot of financial stake that Robert and his mother had in the film. I don't remember the specifics, but with that little tag at the beginning, she did inspire him. And he did manage to get the film made, and I will say I do like the film. It is a slasher film, and it does have some gore at points, but it's not overly bloody like slasher films later in the decade would get, or even a couple of the Friday the 13th films that were made around this time. I mean, we do see the reaction with the bees. We do see the aftermath of the hot water, but that's one that's probably better to just see the fall, not actually see the water hit him. And some of the murder scenes we do see, but they're not overly gory. Like, we don't see mountains of blood boiling up. But they're just graphic enough to where you're like, ew. It's like a mid-ground between Halloween and Friday the 13th, content-wise. There is a very big psychological aspect of this film, and part of it involves our main character, Angela, and part of it also goes in with how the film is edited at times, because there are parts of the film where it's like, alright, this is a little weird with how this is editing. Are they trying to imply something here? It goes with the film, and it does make the film stand out compared to other slasher movies. I mean, like Friday the 13th, which I know that comparison's weird to keep bringing up, but it is fitting. There is that psychological aspect, but with the way the film is constructed and edited is more straightforward, whereas here, it's a little bit more artsy, even though I wouldn't say in and of itself it is artsy. It's just by comparison. The plot of the film is that we begin with a flashback showing a boating accident on a trip near Camp Arawak. We see a female camp counselor take control of a boat, even though she was not supposed to, and she accidentally runs the boat into a family, a father and two children. About a little less than a decade later, we see that the female survived. She's living with her aunt. That would be Angela. She's living with her aunt, Dr. Martha Thomas, and her son, Ricky. Angela and Ricky are going to be going to camp, and Angela's introverted, so Ricky's going to be the overprotective, doting cousin. And as the film goes along, all the other kids and some of the counselors and even one of the cooks try to take advantage of Angela's nature or hate on her for it. And we get a cook that tries to molest Angela, and he gets a good comeuppance. And just with how obvious he was with it, it's like, this is definitely one of the things of the 80s that did not age well about the film. But it makes me wonder how audiences back in the day that part, because nowadays we watch that scene and it's like, ew. The whole fact he's talking about, sex with the other cooks, and the one played by James Earl Jones' father even says that they don't understand what's on your mind. A lot of the other campers, looking at Angela like she's weird, and the actress that plays Angela, Felicia Rose. She actually does do a good job conveying this. Out of all the kid actors, she's probably the one that has the best performance. One of the female camp counselors, she really takes a hate to Angela later once Angela begins to form a relationship with Paul. Which when I saw Paul at first, I'm like, is that Corey Haim? Because of the angle he was out, then I looked up like, oh, nope, that's not Corey Haim. False alarm. Because I was thinking, oh, that would have been interesting if Corey Haim was in here. But nope, it didn't happen. Once Angela meets Paul, she begins to come out of her shell a little bit. It does have some rocky moments that I'm not going to spoil for those who haven't seen the film. But it is part of the plot that leads into the twist, and it is essentially what unveils the twist. We don't see it through Paul's eyes on screen. As the events play out, slowly people start dying. Well, the cook first has his accident. It's not really a death, it's just he's very badly burnt. And the special effects for this are amazing. The pulsating boils that we see come out, the burns on the arms, is like, oh, that's great. Slowly other people start dying. We see one person get drowned. We see one person get attacked in the shower. And as the film goes on, we all notice that it is people that were messing with Angela, which makes you wonder, is Ricky doing this? Could it be Angela? Could it be someone else that's just watching? With how we see a couple of the murders, we have a vague idea who it probably is. The film cost about $350,000 in early 80s money, which when you do the adjust for inflation, probably about $500,000, $550,000 today, give or take. Made about $11 million at the box office, so a pretty good return. And you see a decent amount of that money on the screen. It probably mostly went to the effects and getting the campsite. And with the actors, the only experienced one are the adult characters. Obviously, like I mentioned, we have James Earl Jones as his dad, Robert Earl Jones, in the film. Does a decent job. Mike Kellen as Mel, the owner of the camp, in his final film role, and he's a sleazy adult because he just wants to keep the camp open no matter the cost. It's a good thing he wasn't in Friday the 13th, or he would have been killed first off by Mrs. Voorhees. Here it's like he's going to die by the end, and he gets a pretty good death sequence, especially since he chose poorly. Catherine Camille as Meg, pretty good, pretty sleazy. The moment I saw her, I knew I was going to hate her character. So first thing I said when I saw her was, shut up, Meg. And that is apt, because she's the type of character you want to yell that at. By the end of the film, you're going to be quoting Carlin. If you don't know what line I'm saying, go to my Carlin Queen of Hearts video. You'll see which line I'm talking about. All the kid and teen actors, they do decent for what they have to do. I mean, Jonathan Tiersten as Ricky does a good job. Decent. Christopher Collette as Paul, he's fine. He does have a pretty decent chemistry with Felicia Rose as Angela. And even though Felicia's articulation is not the best, it works for the character she's playing. Her character is introverted. Those eyes of hers, that stare, it works for the character. It's one of those things where all the elements combined make the film work. And I do like that it's one of these films with teen characters set at a camp where a lot of the characters are played by teen actors. So it does also help the authenticity, instead of looking at actors who are like, these are early 20s actors or maybe later playing teens. Now, for those of you who have never seen the film and don't want the twist spoiled, this is going to be the part of the review where you might want to skip to the last part. So I'm going to give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Last warning, after this, here be spoilers. At the very end of the film, we find out that Angela is a transgender girl. As Ronnie says it when they find out, my God, she's a boy. Then it does freeze frame, and the credits begin. Now, as we find out here, in the beginning, that accident, Angela actually died and her brother Peter survived. It's just that their aunt is so weird, eccentric, and screwy that she decided to raise Peter as a girl and make him take Angela's name. Which explains everything about Angela/Peter's mental issues. He was old enough to know he was born a boy and that his sister died in the accident, but then now he has to take her identity, as it were. Has to be careful not to do anything that would reveal the identity, so doesn't shower with the other girls, doesn't go swimming because something obvious would be shown, even though kind of likes Peter, doesn't want to do anything that might reveal the truth. And this adds another layer to it, that Angela now has to question her sexuality with everything. I mean, born a male, knows she was born a male, but raised a female. What is she? I mean, is she technically gay because of this, even though she identifies as woman? It's one of those weird things the film never comments on, but it's there as subtext. From what I understand, the first three sequels kind of have it to where she actually undergoes a legit sex change, so that kind of the part is taken away. But it's one of those things that you go, the aunt really messed Angela up by doing this. Her being very introverted, and as we see, she's the one that does the murders, although there is that two-murder theory, which I can kind of see why they would do that, because there's a couple things that happen that, more than likely Ricky would probably do that, especially with how overprotective he is. And especially since there's that one shot where it's Ricky's actor being a stand-in for Angela, in with the HD lighting. It's like, yeah, that looks more like Ricky than it does Angela. Now, as I said, Paul, we never see his on-screen reaction to the reveal, but considering the fact that Angela kills Paul, I'm going to guess he overreacted. I think it probably would have been a little bit better to actually see the reaction on screen, but that might have killed the reveal afterwards. And the fact that that's the end of the film, it's a fitting way to end it, because after that we know the police are probably going to be called. They're going to probably take Angela away from her aunt, and she'll probably get the mental help she needs to figure out everything. And once we find out this reveal, all the little foreshadowing moments we saw earlier in the film, the whole thing with the physicals, like I mentioned, her not wanting to be around the other girls in the shower, going swimming, those weirdly edited artsy flashbacks, they all make sense. And even to an extent, Ricky's overprotectiveness makes sense, because he knows the truth and he's being overprotective, but for the right reasons. Still makes you wonder why the murders started happening, and if there is two killers, which one started it. Was Ricky starting it to be overprotective, and then after that Angela did one and it just spiraled out of control? Alright, spoiler section over here. As you can tell, I did enjoy the film. I do plan on getting the Blu-ray release of it down the road. And who knows, maybe I might do a proper written review one of these days. If I do, I might just wait and watch the sequels and do a series overview video. It does come with my recommendation if you are a fan of slasher movies, and if you are a fan of low-budget horror. There's a chance you might not like it, and you might think, oh, it's gimmicky just because of the end twist. I'd say all the film does lead towards that end twist, but the film is enjoyable even before that twist. That twist just answers a lot of questions that the film raises before that ending. And one thing I forgot to mention, the score is pretty decent too. Edward Bealis did a great job. Cinematography is pretty good for the low budget. Robert actually did do a decent directing job. Rating, at least a 3-star rating, maybe 3.5. It's one of those ones, it's like bouncing back and forth. It's in that zone for me.